webinar today. We're going to be talking about engaging and empowering your C-store team and doing it even when they're under pressure. Really excited to have you here. A brief bit about SG Voices. We're your go-to resource for connecting with industry leaders, accessing trusted educational content, and discovering valuable insights that are helping you drive your business growth. Our mission is to empower you with relevant and actionable knowledge tailored to the challenges and opportunities that we face in our industry today. So I'm excited to have two experts in the field as we talk about engaging and empowering our C-store team. One is our friends at goHappy, and then we'll follow that with our friends at McClaskey Excellence Institute with David McClaskey and Billy Schaefer. I'll introduce them a little bit more as we get later into the webinar, but a bit about goHappy. They're going to be talking about the secret to happy and loyal frontline employees, touching on what's working to engage frontline teams right now, top challenges we as operators are facing, and practical strategies that we can take back to our store and ultimately implement. Three folks will be with us. Andy Morgan, who's the Director of Frontline Engagement at goHappy. A brief bit about Andy. He's been with goHappy for 18 years in the HR tech space and helping organizations maximize engagement. We also have Laura Varn. Laura's the owner of Laura Varn and Associates and was formerly with Parkland Fuel Corp. So it's always nice to hear from peers, people who are in our business that are doing the day in and day out. And then we have study group member Calloway Oil, Melanie Disney, who's the head of HR there. So I'm excited to have their experience. Laura's been 25 years in the industry, successfully working with HR and corporate communications, and Melanie's been 20 years in the hospitality and retail industry and presently serves as that head of HR at Calloway Oil, Easy Stop Food Marts. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. What I am going to say is this slide deck will be sent out to you afterwards, as well as the recording of this. We really want this to be educational. So if you do have questions, you're on mute, but please type those into the GoToWebinar framework. I can read those and I'll relay them to our presenters at the appropriate time. So Andy Morgan, goHappy, tell us a little bit about what's the secret to happy, loyal frontline employees.
Great, thanks, Jed. Excited to be here today. So we'll be covering some super relevant topics in terms of challenges that exist with engaging frontline team members. So we'll also be able to share some of the things that are working with the goal of providing actionable takeaways that you all can take back to your team. So to start it off, I thought it would be helpful to give a very super brief overview on goHappy and how we're helping groups actually reach their frontline teams. So our mission here at goHappy is to help all frontline workers feel more valued and connected so they can reach their full potential and live more fulfilling lives. And it starts with, really the simple challenge here. So here's some industry data that frames kind of the overall state, and that is that 80% of the global workforce is deskless, but the majority of the engagement tools weren't really built for that audience. 73% of frontline workers feel disconnected, and so these are folks that are less engaged, less productive, more likely to leave the organization. SHRM estimates that cost per hire of $4,700 to replace each team member, and when you multiply that by your turnover rate, it adds up fast, obviously. And couple that with the fact that 85% of the workforce doesn't have email, Slack, Microsoft Teams. It's incredibly difficult to simply reach that frontline audience. So some of the biggest connection blockers that we see that occur between the home office, frontline leaders, frontline teams are some of the items that you see here. Unused apps. A lot of organizations that we work with rely on posting signs in break rooms and games of telephone, and by the time information passes through three different managers, the message has already changed. So that's exactly why goHappy was built, and specifically we were built on texting because you can look at the difference in reach. With personal email, you're reaching 20% of the workforce. App engagement gets a little bit higher. You can get about 40% of folks to download apps and turn on push notifications. But with text, you get a 98% open rate, and messages are read within 3 minutes. It's the fastest, most effective way to reach the frontline workforce. So a lot of, when you are able to break through, here's some of the benefits that our partners are seeing, and it's, driving exponentially higher levels of engagement. The most engaged locations have 14% lower turnover, and increased benefit enrollment because when employees actually see the messages, they enroll. So it leads to higher guest satisfaction scores and higher show rates. So that's the super high level version on goHappy. And I'm quite fortunate to be able to be joined today by Laura Varn and Melanie Disney, who are two of the best in the business. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that are actually happening on the ground. So Laura, Melanie, we'll go ahead and tee it up. When you think about engaging frontline employees and the people in your stores, what makes it so hard is, what are some of the gaps between what you want to happen and what's actually happening? Laura, maybe we'll start with you.
Go ahead. I'll just jump on in here. I think there's two main things that cause these gaps. One is there's a real misalignment of expectations. So the leadership may want it to go one way, but that doesn't get communicated down to the workforce in a really seamless way. And that's a consistent issue I've seen across the board. And the other thing I would say is there's a real lack of focus on building the relationships. And that matters a lot, because in any role, you have the technical part and you also have the relationship part. And if you don't show that you care about employees, they're not going to care about the business. It's just as simple as that. So I think that is why that relationship between the frontline supervisor and the employee is so critical. And I wish there was more focus and attention on that frontline supervisor, because that could really help with the retention and engagement.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. And Melanie, you'd mentioned something in our prep as well, where managers with some of the highest operational scores didn't necessarily know their employees' last names. So how did you discover that, and what did that tell you about what was missing there?
Yeah, so I had employees or managers calling in and asking for various different things for their teams, and I would say, okay, what's their last name? Because I might have 3 Sarahs. If it's a generic name, I might have several of them, and I had several of them over a period of time that would just kind of pause and go, well, crap, I don't know their last name. Hang on a minute. And they're going through their roster and that kind of thing. So that alerted me very quickly to the fact that there's a connection gap there. If you don't know the last name of your employees, I thought, well, okay, what else do you not know about your employees? And we do all these surveys and all those sorts of things, but we didn't have a true structure around connecting with the employees. And I think the tasks get in the way. We're very fast-paced, very hard-driving business in retail and in hospitality. With my background, it's always been very fast. So we challenged our teams to slow down, take the time to get to know your employees, and do a better job just connecting overall. Take that 1 minute, you do your inputs, you do your checklist, you do all your tasks, all your things. So just slow down and take that 1 to 5 minutes each day to connect with your team members.
Yeah, absolutely. And Laura, right now, I know you're in a position where you're building culture from scratch with 600 new team members, which is both a challenge and an opportunity. What are some of the most intentional, or what are you most intentional about in those early days with new team members?
We've been uber focused on culture. If you're going to build it right from the beginning, how you take all those lessons from your past lives and really put something together where it's going to stick, and it's easy to attract talent, it's easy to retain talent, and certainly to hit your production goals. So how have we really been focused on culture? Certainly you got to nail the table stakes really well. You got to onboard well, you've got to train really well. Those are easy things to say you're going to do, but when you're really building them from scratch and you're hiring 50 to 70 people a month, it gets tricky and gets convoluted pretty fast. So we've been real focused on that. While this is a small piece of culture, we have made sure we have the right environment as well at the beginning. So things like, we wanted to have a strong partnership with a daycare in the area so we could really foster young families and make sure that we have a good wraparound services. So we've done that. We knew it mattered a lot to this company to have weekly pay, so we made sure that we instilled that. And we also had a pretty strong referral bonus program from the beginning, because this was the first time we're building this company in the US. There was no brand recognition. And so those kind of things really help. But the main thing is we focused a lot on the supervisors to really make sure they had the right people leadership skills in place. We knew they had the right technical skills, but how do we make sure, again, they really know how to build that culture of care so that we can make the production we need and just have the workforce that we want to have there.
I love some of the things that you did with, being intentional about the benefits, knowing what people want, knowing what to offer in order to make that happen. So you both also mentioned something that I think is one of the most overlooked pieces of frontline engagement, and that's the supervisor role. And a lot of times these are often, your newest managers, maybe they were great cashiers or shift leaders last month, and now they're responsible for keeping teams engaged. What's actually going on there?
Yeah, I think we promote people because of their technical skills, but we don't often think, do they have the right leadership skills? And that's okay, but it's our job in HR to equip them, train them, make sure they're ready for that part. And I think oftentimes we don't do that. And so I think that's a real big disconnect, is that we need to put them in a position to succeed. So when they are promoted, where they used to be peers with people, but now they're maybe over them, that we're giving them the right people leadership skills to succeed. Because it's a different dynamic now. They can't be friends with them the way they perhaps used to be. It's a different leadership dynamic. And so we need to really equip those new promoted managers differently in a way that we haven't before.
Yeah, I agree. And Melanie, one of the things we talked about was this, the 1 minute of intentional connection goal and even a bingo card exercise. Can you share a little bit more about that and what you were looking to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming out of the conversation we just had about some of the managers not even knowing the last name of their new hires of their employees, we sat down at a manager's meeting and I did a bingo card, which it was just kind of silly in nature, just to get the conversation started, very lighthearted, and asked them to be very open and honest. And it had several questions on there about their teams. What's their favorite place to go out to eat? Do they have pets? Do they have kids? Do their kids play sports? Did they play a sport? Just all sorts of different kind of personal items, just connection questions, those icebreakers that we've all done when we've sat in seminars and those kinds of things. Put them all on the page. And it was really funny because we get the team in the room and y'all kind of sit around and you have some that are like, no, I'm seriously connected to my team. And I kind of laughed. Well, one of you were one of the ones that called me last week that didn't know the last name. So let's test this. Let's have a little fun with it and be honest. We have a very open and engaging environment here. We have a lot of managers that have been around 20 plus years. So they're very communicative. And when we sat down and we did the card, it was basically a grade system of if you get so many right, you get the high score, right? And the person with the high score is really, really connected to your teams. And the ones with the lower scores or the mid scores, well, we maybe got some work to do, right? So it was very eye-opening to get them to sit down and do that, because they came away from it going, gosh, I thought I knew my team, but maybe I really didn't. And then we followed that up. We didn't just leave it there, because it's just like everything else. We take little nuggets from these things that we watch, just like this webinar that we're doing right now. You take little nuggets away from it and you try to make them work. And our managers are so busy, they go back to the front lines and they get back to their task and they forget. So we brought them in one district at a time and continued the conversation. And all of this year, we are going to continue that conversation about connecting with your teams on a monthly basis. We're going to continue to get together. We're going to continue to drive that connection and get feedback on it. And one example is I had a manager that was opening up a brand new store, and Marcus had been in play at another location for a couple of years, had a great team. Some of the team went with him to the new store opening, but it seemed like on the employee side, everything was falling apart. Store looked fantastic. I mean, you could go in there, it was beautiful. He was working a lot of hours and he was calling me going, I don't understand why this is falling apart. These are some of my same employees, same things going on. What's the glitch here? And when we started doing this bingo card and having these conversations about connections, he's like, well, wait a minute. I've been so task focused on getting all of these things perfect, I forgot about my team. So he sat down, he went back with a clipboard to his store and just randomly went through the store asking each employee, hey, do you have a pet? What's your pet's name? Do you have kids? Do you have I mean, just these random crazy questions. And he said, they looked at me like I had lost my mind. I'm like, what is wrong with you? What are you doing? But he engaged with them. They engaged with him. They started engaging with each other. Like, our manager's lost his mind over here. What is going on? Why is he asking these crazy questions? But it opened up that whole engagement within the entire store. He said, then I took it a step farther. So at Christmas, he got little stockings and he put up with the initials of each employee. And he took something that he learned about that employee and put it into that stocking, whether it was their favorite candy bar, it was a gift card to Starbucks if they like a certain cup of coffee over there, or one person had several pets and he talked about this specific dog bone or something that they liked, so he put that in the stocking. So he went above and beyond with what he did for that connection with his team. And all of a sudden, his turnover went back down. He was re-engaged with his team, and that store is running like a charm.
I love that. What a great story. It's all about the connection, and that's exactly what we are preaching here as well. So thank you for sharing that. So let's get a little bit more specific. When you're both doing things that are moving the needle, and I'm talking about actual results, not just feel good programs. Laura, maybe you could start us off. What's working for you right now?
Yeah, I think it all starts and ends with communication. You just cannot over communicate enough, and you got to keep in mind that people need to hear things 7 or 10 times before it really resonates. So we've been doing a number of things to really communicate well. We have town halls at least once a month where we really can give some good recognition and shout outs. I mean, look, everybody wants to feel part of something bigger than themselves. And that's just a great way to give that recognition. It makes that individual feel valued and special, but you also get more of that, right? You get more of the good stuff when you're doing things like that. I have found goHappy to be a very good resource to, again, keep that communication touch points going on things that they really need to know. And, you know, the other thing I just say is we've been doing a lot of stay interviews, and that's just very organic and very natural, a lot like what Melanie was just talking about. But, you know, what's working, what's not working, what do I need to know right now? And you can do that when you're walking the shop floor with folks or when you're out at the convenience store. It really helps the employees feel engaged and heard, which matters a lot. And it also helps you from the business perspective know what really needs to go on. So, you know, one quick example I can give you is when I was walking the manufacturing floor the other day, I was talking to an employee and kind of asking some of these questions, and, you know, talked about how we're really on a major hiring spree. And he said, well, I have some folks that I can recommend. He didn't know that we had a referral policy. So, you know, we talked about that. And that next day I got 5 referrals from him.
Yeah.
I mean, and we hired 4 of them. Like, that was an amazing gift that we got from really about a 5-minute conversation where it just clicked. So it doesn't need to be anything formal or really complex. It honestly is just having those authentic, genuine communications. And I find that if you do that, you will get so much information out of the employees because they want to help make the company better. And that actually moves the needle more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. What a great gift to be able to pull 5 awesome referred team. You know, Laura, you know, you've also talked about the employee-shaped culture is one of the things that you and I have discussed in the past, and really culture that, you know, employees help define, not just what leadership thinks it should be. Can you talk a little bit about how you're doing that with a brand new workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. I think culture is built certainly from the top down, but it's also built from the bottom up, right? It's the norms and the processes and how people interact and all of those things. And we intentionally wanted to have it be both when we started this culture with this new organization in the US. And so it's really creating that spirit of, and corporately we would use the term continuous improvement. You know, that's really what it is. But how do you ask them, what do you think we could be doing differently or better? And then acting on it, if it makes sense, right? And there's been a number of examples where we've done that. We just, I mean, nobody knows better than the boots on the ground what makes sense and what doesn't. And if you really take the time to ask them, they can help shape those processes and procedures. You know, one of the things I've always remembered, and you guys may remember this story too, but decades ago, Johnson & Johnson was really having an issue with baby powder wanting to grow sales. And they couldn't figure out how to do it. They were spending all this money on outside consultants, advertising agencies, you know, round and round, couldn't find any answers. Then they finally went to the employees who are making the product on the shop floor. And one of them raised their hand in the back and said, just make the holes bigger. And they did. And sales went through the roof. Like, it was something so simple, but you had to hear it from the people that are making the product. And I think that's a really valuable lesson that helps create this more, you know, employee-centric culture. And when they own it, they protect it and they make sure that they're bringing more excellence into the culture. So we found that to be very powerful and pretty influential.
Yeah, very good. I love that, and I always love that story as well. You know, it's one of the best. So, Melanie, question for you. One of the things we talked about was your NICE program. It's nice people, good stuff, and there's the $100 monthly recognition that's tied to those pillars. Can you walk us through how that works and what's happened since you implemented it?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like Lori talked about, culture, it comes from the top down, but also from the bottom up. So as you're opening new stores and hiring new employees, how do you continue to grow that culture and keep it consistent throughout the company? And the company sort of, I would say, built their culture, what most might view as backwards, but they put the pillars and the mission statement based on the long tenured employees that they felt like embodied what Easy Stop was about. So they built it, the words came from that, the culture came from that, and we literally have on everything out there, it says nice people, good stuff. So we have nice people in the stores and we have good stuff for our customers. And building off of that structure, you can't just throw culture out, it becomes wallpaper if it's just hanging on a poster in the back room somewhere and it's in the handbook, but it's not communicated and it's not lived every single day in the values. So we structured everything around the culture, including the NICE program. But we defined what nice means. What does it mean to be nice at Easy Stop? What does it mean to be great at Easy Stop? And that is defined throughout. It's not only in the onboarding, it's on goHappy, several different checkpoints with the employees, because just like Laura said, it takes 8 to 10 times of the same communication to catch. So we've got all of those pieces out there, but how is it actionable? So everything that we do from start to finish, from our onboarding to our training, to our hands-on training with our managers, to even our disciplinary actions, everything is built based off of all of our culture and values. So we tie it in. The NICE program's the same way. They nominate an employee per month per store, and they can do 2 or 3 if they want, and we have them tie it to one of the values. So urgency is one of them. So they'll give an example of how they exhibited urgency or respect, honesty, integrity, all of those things that are our pillars, or if just somebody's being extremely nice. Over the snowstorm, there was a lot of examples that came in of people carrying ricks of wood out to customers that couldn't carry them, or their gallons of milk, or one lady came in and needed her tires aired up, and her husband had passed away. So we had a team member that went out there and showed her how to air the tires up and how to do it the next time when she came back in, or just come in and see me, I'll do it for you. So those things get recognized inside of our culture, and we show that through goHappy. That's the tool that we use to get the text out there, to show these are the examples and these are the stories behind it, and this is our culture. So as we go into these new stores and you've got 25 or 30 new employees each time we open one, continuing that culture that's there, this is how it's working, is that recognition and everything that's tied back to it. We even have conversations around, even when there's an opportunity or there's a corrective action, which one of those values and those pillars were they not exhibiting? You really weren't doing a good job of teamwork today when you didn't step in and help, your teammate. So they give examples of that, and it all ties back to the same thing: nice people, good stuff, and then our values behind it. So it's very defined, very structured, but then we rely on our managers to go out there and execute all of those things. But we define what that looks like here. So when somebody gets outside of those rails, we know that's an opportunity and we got to bring it back in, and it's very specific. And I think that makes it a whole lot easier for our managers to figure out what nice means at Easy Stop.
Melanie, I love it that you define what nice means. I've worked with David McClaskey and Billy Schaefer, and they'll talk in a little bit, but that's one of the key things that they stress, of like all these terms, everybody comes up with their own definition. Like, let's drive away the gray and really define what it is so people can execute consistently.
Yeah, and it just gets lost. It gets to be, like I said, it gets to be wallpaper and nobody pays any attention to it. But and I've told them in the meetings, like, if you can't remember all of the core values that are out there, just remember what nice means. And that's it. You stop right there, you've got it.
Melanie, quick follow-up there. And I just wanted to say one of the things I love that your team at Easy Stop does really well is the use of storytelling. You're able to broadcast the stories and get those out there, distribute them in a way that actually reaches the workforce. But are you experiencing any changes to your turnover that you can tie to any recent initiatives or anything specific that's really making a difference that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I can say initially, we didn't roll the NICE program out until end of December. So I don't know that I have good data behind that just yet, Andy. We're still kind of vetting that out, working through it. Because again, the connection 2026 is where we're really driving retention and turnover and connecting with your teams and all of those sorts of things. But we started having conversations around this back in December. The bingo card, we started that back in December, and we're already seeing a turn in our turnover. We're about 20% down as of right now, and we've got room to move certainly, but I think that was a good start just right out the gate, and I think it's going to get a whole lot better as we go forward.
Right. Well, one of the biggest things that I've taken away from just discussions with the both of you are, it's not about just one big program. It's about multiple touch points, recognition, communication, connecting people. So there's a thread that ties it all together. But in terms of things that you might like to share with the audience, Laura, if someone's listening out there and is thinking, I need to do something about my frontline engagement, but I'm overwhelmed, quick ideas as to where they should start.
Yeah, I think they should invest in their frontline leadership. It's probably the number one thing that I think people can do. I'm a big believer of that quote. I'm sure you guys have all heard it. If you want to go fast, you go by yourself. But if you want to go far, you go with others. And the best way to go far within an organization is with your frontline leadership. So what are easy ways to do that? You schedule a 15-minute meeting with them virtually, or you go, if you can't go in person to see them, get them on the phone, ask them some of those basic stay interview questions, right? What's working for you? What do you need? What do I need to know to help you? They will, amazing thing happens when you ask people questions like that. They will give you their thoughts, right? So take that and then do what you say you're going to do for them, help them out. But sometimes it's just something little that they need. And if you can do that or get a number of them together and have a conversation, but you don't need to have a formal program. You don't need to do anything that costs more money. You just need to dig in and lean in and be a little bit more engaged with your frontline supervisors. And I think that they will feel more empowered to engage their employees.
Love that. Thanks, Laura. Melanie, last quick question for you before we open it up to questions. What's the one thing you wish that more HR and operations leaders understood about frontline employee engagement?
I think you have to understand that you always have to change. You always have to ebb and flow with your employees. You can't take your finger off the pulse. What works today is not going to work 6 months from now. It's not going to work a year from now. So whatever recognition program we're doing right now, this is not going to be a staple for Easy Stop year over year over year, because the expectations change, what our employees' needs change. So I think the surveys are important, keeping a finger on the pulse and trying to figure out exactly what it is that they're looking for and what they need in today's environment. And that may always be different. So we try to stay in front of that. Used to, it might be a pizza party or, some sort of engagement thing like that. And in today's world, I think it's more people are craving that connection. We're so disconnected with technology, and I know I'm on a technology call with a technology vendor. So you guys are great, but it's a tool. It's an amazing tool to use to keep the communication going and keep the things in the background. But what you can't lose sight of is you still need to engage with your employees. So if our managers, Laura made a great point, you've got to pour into your leadership teams, because if you're not doing that, then that's not top down. They're not going to do the same thing with their teams. If we're ignoring them, then chances are they're going to ignore their frontline employees. So that's where you've got to, as a company, be very intentional about that connection, and not just the emails, not just on the phone, not just through a survey, but you need to be boots on the ground. You need to talk to your employees. You need to have these meetings or these Zoom calls where you are looking face to face and having that connection and those conversations. And then I think that just makes all the difference in the world.
Andy, I had a quick question for Laura from the audience. Laura was talking about communication being so vital and key, and some of the things that she was doing, but like town hall initiatives, recognition and shout outs, stay interviews, but she also mentioned she uses goHappy and as a communication tool. And the question is just what kind of things are you communicating out via that goHappy communication tool to your team?
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because I just had a client that asked me to put together a one-pager about all the ways that I would recommend using it. Because there certainly are, look, there's some tactical things that you can use it for, and I can go through a couple examples, but there's some real clear strategic things and culture building things to use it for too. And I think that's really where you get the best, secret sauce out of the use of the product. So tactical things certainly could be, if there's inclement weather, when you need to come into the office that day, or if there's cars parked in a handicapped spot and they don't have a tag on it that need to be moved, or, all of that kind of stuff, certainly in the moment of what's happening. What's really beneficial is, again, like the example I gave of the individuals who brought forth 5 different names for referral program. You snap a picture of him and that goes out to everybody about thank you to this person who participated in the referral program. It's, $1,000 a person or what, makes them feel really good and acknowledged. And again, you get more of it, right? So things like that, talking about big milestones that the company has hit, it makes people really feel a part of something bigger than themselves, right? So safety tips, right? You can always, I'd have one of those out a week. But really, if there's new promotions that come out with folks, you talk about the values that are out there. I mean, there's just a whole host of things that really can make people feel like they know what's going on and that they are a part of it. And I think that's what's key. There's certainly the host of the HR things, when open enrollment is, and what they need to do to take some training. I've used it before with handbooks. It's so hard to get all employees to acknowledge the handbook, but you really need to have that. There's an easy way to put that on goHappy, where the next time they go into goHappy, they have to acknowledge that. So it can really help you with a lot of things in addition to the engagement surveys and things. But what I like about it is super simple to use, and the employees don't have to do anything.
Awesome.
So
well, thank you for that,
works.
Laura and Melanie. Appreciate your guys' expertise in sharing, and Andy, for you. We're going to change gears now and move over to David McClaskey and Billy Schaefer at the McClaskey Excellence Institute. But if you have any more questions for or people who just presented, go ahead and type them in, and we'll make sure those get answered either now or later on after this broadcast. So David and Billy, we're going to talk a little bit about how we enable our team to perform even when they're slammed. Our companies are always under stress. We're lean. People are slammed, and we want to make sure we're continuing to deliver great performance even in that. So really look forward to hearing from that. For the audience, just a little bit about David and Billy. So David is the founder of the McClaskey Excellence Institute. It's a globally recognized operations excellent expert, and he's created the Triple 100 Path to Excellence, and he can tell you more about what that is. But won a lot of awards and honors. He's worked with a lot of study group members on their organizations being more excellent. And Billy and David even teach the Achieving World-Class Results course that I've personally taken, and a number of our study group members have, and they talk about things like driving out the gray, which Melanie was talking about a little bit earlier in her presentation, and getting consistent definitions among many other things in there. But that's a bit about David and Billy. And David, I'll turn it over to you to tell us more about how we can enable our team to perform even when we're slammed. David, you may be muted. I'm not hearing you here.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jed. I appreciate that.
You're running now.
And let's go back to the slides here. And you can see the slides as well. Let's see. Okay. Okay. And you're seeing the slides as well?
Yeah, it looks great. Looks great.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jed. I very much appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure to have you and the other leaders and study groups in our Achieving World-Class Results class. So, and it was just it was so wonderful listening to the goHappy presentation, listening to Andy and Laura and Melanie. And so they're talking about a world-class way of connecting, which is, so there isn't one answer that solves all your people problems. What we specialize in is something that you heard Laura talk a lot about, where she said, how do we set up our supervisors? How do we set up our frontline supervisors? How do we train them in leadership? How do we equip them? That's what we do. And so we do it by sharing, how do companies that have world-class operations, how do they do it? And what exactly do they do? And we've captured the essence of this, and that's what we teach leaders all over the world for the last 25 years. And it's just fabulous. So we're going to address an issue that Laura brought up as part of her responses. How do you set up frontline employees? And part of it will incorporate something that Melanie said, where she said, well, we're going to, if Easy Stop's values are nice people and good stuff, but nice people doesn't help people perform at all. But if you define what nice means, that enables you to really drive your team members' behavior. And that's just part of the whole process. And so we have a whole process called Achieving World-Class Results and a path to excellence. And we're going to talk about a small piece of it. And the piece we're going to talk about right now, and I would say, if I was saying what's the total, this is like 1/50th, but this is the issue we're addressing right here, is how do you enable your team to perform in the slam? And let's start with this. You know it's going to happen. It's not like, well, this is a surprise, never happened to us before. We've never had a meteorite hit our house. No, you know it's going to happen. So there's two things you do. You prepare for it, and then you give instructions of what to do while it's going on. You don't want people, it's going to be handled. There's no question about it. The question is how well is it going to be handled? And you go, gosh, I wish you guys hadn't done that. And so what are some ways that you can actually prepare, and what are some proven practices that you can do this week? So we're not talking about things that are going to require huge cultures. These are things you can do because you prepare, and mostly this preparation is done on a multi-store level as opposed to an individual store. When it's individual stores, stores are reacting individually. Now, this is how we want people to react as a brand. Here's some basic guidance. And then within that guidance, we can then have the specifics. So let's talk about 5 strategies. And let's start with this. What's the problem when you get slammed? And you know, we haven't even really asked ourselves that very much. So why do we care? Well, 2 things are happening. When you get slammed, and there's 2 ways to get slammed. One of them is you're properly staffed, and all of a sudden you have an overwhelming amount of business you hadn't planned for. The other one is you have the regular amount of business, and 2 or 3 of your team members didn't show up. And so you're short-staffed either way. And so what happens when either one of those conditions occurs? And they occur in almost every operation, sometimes weekly, but certainly in the course of a month, you're going to have multiple occurrences in a lot of brands. And so we need to have a plan to how to handle this. We don't want people just winging it. Let's give some guidance. So what happens when people shortcut? Why do we care? Well, when things get rushed, steps get skipped. And you don't want the individual team member deciding which steps are going to be skipped. If you're selling a product that requires a person being above 18 to sell the product, and what they skip is checking the ID. Oh, I think the person's old enough. I mean, you could ruin your entire business by skipping those steps. And so you're saying, no, I don't care how busy you are. That step does not get skipped. But there are other things you can do, and we'll talk about those. And so we want to control what happens. We don't want it just to be winging. And when you have this chaos, if everybody just handles the situation the best they can, your brand standard erodes, your customer experience becomes very inconsistent. You really stress the staff out. The staff and management gets, and as a result, you get less repeat business, less positive referrals, and more complaints. So what are the 5 things? And we're going to talk about each of those 5, but let me go ahead and name them. The first one you can do is, and remember, it's about preparation of what you do during the actual occurrence, is you can actually say, I am going to have this situation. Well, this isn't a question, this is a known fact. It's only how often. What are we going to do? And it could be, we're going to just run our normal processes the normal way with no change. That's one approach. It could be, when we're slammed, this is what we do. Oh, we stop stocking the shelves right then, and we take care of checking the customers out. Don't have somebody in the office while you've got large lines and customers that need help right this second. So you can do things that say, when things aren't normal, when we're getting slammed, then we alter our normal processes this way. That's not violating our process. That's what you do under these circumstances. That is the process. So you're not winging it. We've actually thought it through and discussed the best thing. The next thing you do is you have a right speed policy. Basically, when you get slammed, you're making a trade-off between two things: quality and quantity. Let's go. We got all these people. We're just going to go as fast as we can, and we're going to do everything we can to minimize everything. But sometimes the things you minimize were critical failures. And I like the way Melanie said, things that if you say these are the important things for nice and easy stop, those are not the things you violate. It's other things that don't have a big impact on the customers or the things you've designed to compromise on at this point. You need to make good use of your team. If you got more than one person in the store, what do you do when one person slammed? What's the other person do? And part of that involves cross training. If they say, like, I'd like to help them out, but I don't know how to run the cash register. I don't know how to answer these questions. I don't know how to prepare this ready-made meals because I've never been taught. So we can do cross training again in advance. The other thing is we can train to 100%. One of the things that causes just day in and day out, even when you're not slammed, is rarely do we find people training to 100%. We find the average that leaders tell us is 75%. A lot of things don't happen right because people aren't trained to 100%, and we can show how to do that. And then lastly, you need to build the local empowerment. Yes, you can't describe everything that's going to happen, but you can set guidelines and empowerment. For example, if you're a restaurant and someone complains about that they got sick because of something they bought, you don't want to handle that as a normal complaint. When that happens, I want it to be done this way. Where other complaints you're saying, we'd like you to handle it, and here's the guidelines for your handling it. So those are the 5 things, and we're going to go through and just briefly cover those. But what I'm saying is I hope you're going to say yes to all 5 of them. Think about, you're already doing some of this. Think about the next hour after this webinar. Think about what you can do. You can improve it and make it easier for everybody. So let's talk about designing simplified processes. What are you going to do when with these processes when you're stressed? In some cases, I want you to run them exactly 100%. In other cases, we can make smart decisions because something's going to give because you're stressed. Normal operations for everything isn't going to work. There's going to be a price to pay somewhere, and we want to elect where the price is paid. So, for example, there's a number of convenience stores that have loyalty programs, and they want you to ask, are you a member of our loyalty program? And if not, here's, let me help you. In some cases, they'll want the person to just, it only takes 30 seconds or so. They'll want them to help enroll right then. Just tell me this, here it is, you're enrolled, away you go. Well, when you're really busy, you probably don't do that. You probably say, well, you're not a program, this will help you. And here's a very nicely designed form that they can show you, or a QR code or something that you can go over there and just scan it and it will walk you through it. But I don't have time, we basically have said they don't have time because they got a line of 10 people and you don't want to be taking that time right then to do that. But if there's nobody behind them, you do. So a differences. Another one is when you talk about full service restaurants and things of that nature, what happens to it? And where do we go? Where have we, we need to engage people, and what changes can we make that make sense to make that change? So when it's simplified, you just keep the simplest transactions. You don't, you keep the conversation so that it ends when the transaction ends. So you've done everything you can for friendliness, but you haven't spent the extra 30 seconds talking to the customer when they got a big line behind them, because that does not work behind you. The second of the 5 things is the right speed. We talked about the major things that are being compromised between when things get stressed are the quality and the quantity. So you need to set the basic guidance. And the basic guidance is we compromise where the things are least important. And there's some things we just don't ever compromise. We do it 100% right. So we want to go as fast as we can get it 100% right. And we're going to decide what those policies are. The example with Easy Stop was, okay, these are the key things that really are critical to NICE. Those things we don't compromise on. The other things are the things that we are going to compromise on when we're slammed. So basically, you've got to give some rules that say, look, these things we just never compromise on. We don't ever fail to check IDs for those kind of products. And the customers expect it, but you also have to realize the customers expect speed is almost always, in just about every service business, speed is a factor. And in some cases, it's, well, I need to get everything 100% right, and I need to take all the time I can with each customer, and however much time it is, the time it is. In other cases, we can do some things that, well, we saved a third of the time, but we basically had almost no impact on the customer. Those were the last 10%, and it didn't damage any of it. I love the way restaurants, full service restaurants and fast casuals are full, where they'll say, look, we didn't have, half of our servers didn't show up. So we can't have all our tables available for seating because we don't have the servers to serve them. Because the quality of the engagement, the quality of everything, or the back of the house. We had 3 of the people in the back of the house didn't show up. So we really can't cook the volume. So we limit the number of tables we'll allow customers to be seated at, so that we can make sure we're providing the right customer service for those are. And Billy, do you want to take through the last 3?
Yeah, so when we talk about the next step of how we can really work when our team is stressed, first thing we have to do is cross-training your team. I know I understand what everybody on this call is thinking now. You're like, oh, thank you, bald guy, for telling me what we already know. But you got to understand the why of what it is. If you open up your toolbox and you have a hammer and a Phillips head screwdriver, that's all you can do. But if you have a whole bunch of Swiss Army knives that all have different tools, that's the key. You can get a whole lot of things done with less, and that's the understanding we need. And your cross training just can't be arbitrary. It can't be, you know what, I'm going to train you on this today and that today. No, you have to be very smart about the steps that you can take. Why not cross-train them to the station that's right next to them? So now they can hit both stations at once at a certain volume. Obviously, the speed rule is going to take into place, but the more that you cross-train them to one station to the right and one station to the left, they now have the ability not just to stand in one place, but they can run a ballet and pirouette through a pizza station as well as a sandwich station. And I know what I just said. I'm thinking about somebody pirouetting through these, and it sounds wild in my head, but it makes sense is when you have the ability to go to the left and to the right, because you are understanding the knowledge, you feel better about what you're doing. The reason that these team members get so stressed when they're not trained is because you're asking them to do things that you haven't shown them how to do. And that's not fair. That's actually cruel to somebody to say, you know what, you've never made a pizza, but you are now Chef Boyardee, let's go, you're on it. No, that's not right. That's bad for your customers, that's bad for your team members, and that's bad for your brand. We have to cross-train them so that we can get done what we need to get done. The second here is that handoff. You cannot do everything. If there's another person there that can take something off your plate, use them for that. David made the great example of when you're dealing with a complaint, well, maybe you don't need to be dealing with that in that moment. You can say, hey, you know what? That person over here is not doing anything. Too often I walk into C-stores and you know what I see? I see one person getting their butt kicked. Absolutely getting rocked. And Melanie's shaking her head. She's seen this, she knows. And then you have 2 other people standing over here playing Pokemon Go on their phones, not doing anything. That's not fair. We need to have the ability to say, you know what, I'm getting my butt kicked. You got to help me here. You got to help me here. And it's using that handoff in those times of stress. And when you have the ability, and it goes back to the people being trained, you can now feel better about the equal division of labor as opposed to one person getting rocked, 2 people doing nothing. And here's what's going to happen when that shows up is the person getting their butt kicked is going to quit. Why? Because they're working too hard. The 2 people not doing anything are going to quit. You know why? Because they're not fulfilled in their job. It's both sides. Now your turnover is huge. So when we talk about training to 100%, the next one, so we have to have all conditions training. Now, here's what that means is we never design our jobs for the entire spectrum of volume that we can see. We only design the C-store for what, oh, we're going to do this much in sales today. And you know what? That's our entire frame of reference. That's the only thing we ever even think about. Yeah, we got one on cash, one on pizza, one on this, one over here. That's just what we do. We don't go outside. We don't hit the extremes. But why don't we hit the extremes? When you design a business, you need to design it for the absolute fullest volume that it could ever do. You have got to get it to the end of the actual possibilities that can happen. And then you need to take it all the way back down that one person shows up. What do? You don't drive a Corvette 40 to 60 miles an hour all the time. No, you got to ease into it at 5 miles an hour, and then you better open that puppy up to 200 miles an hour. I'm not saying I drive that fast. I see Andy does because he's smirking right now. We're not going to say that, but you've got to explore the business on both sides. And so you have to go to that full volume and train them into the specific positions of the highest volume. But we're talking about that also when it gets to that stressful time. Snow happens. Everybody calls that. Whatever happens, you have one person. You've got to boil your job, your C-store down to one thing. And this is what I call the anti-technology world, is you have to boil it back down to 1950. What did the business look like then? You didn't need 200 people. You didn't need 5 people. You needed one person. The business itself is transactional. And the only thing that a C-store truly does is if you boil it all the way down to the baseline is you have a cashier. One person rings up an order and one person pays for it. That's the singular point that you can boil this down to, and you design that at minimum. One person shows up to that. So now we have understood that, hey, if only one person shows up, this is the play we run. If we're at the highest volume, this is the staffing that's needed, and then we have train everything in between. This is setting up everybody for 100% success. It's not just setting up for the normal. We're setting up for the extremes as well. And the reason you have to set up for the extremes is because you do not want to make decisions when the extremes happen. That's the worst time to figure it out. When the extremes happen, that's when you just say, yeah, run plan A. That's when you run plan B. That's why we have emergency preparedness response acts. We don't have to think. An earthquake happens, do that. Fire happens, do that. So we have got to put our teams in that same frame of reference of let's set them up for when the extremes happen, because we don't want them thinking. We want them just saying, yep, that's what I'm going to do. We know that we have the mission and the requirements, just like we talked, everything ties back to those values, and they know that they are hitting the mission perfectly with everything that they're doing. We understand what this looked like, and what it comes down to is we have to practice those ancillary scenarios, not just the main, let's do this every single day, this is what you do. No, what happens if? What happens if a pterodactyl comes out of the ground in an earthquake and a volcano, and all of a sudden it's snowing and hailing and sleeting all at the same time? Please don't write that scenario. I don't want to be a part of that, but it could happen. And I understand I speak in hyperbolic, but it's just how I am. It could happen. We have to train for those. And then when we talk about passing off, know what they're responsible for and know what they need to escalate. This is how we get moved forward. That's training for 100%. It's training them when to escalate, how to do all the forms of volume, how to tie everything back to that mission, and actually practicing these scenarios. This is huge. So when we go into the next part of building a local.
I'll just comment on that. You're talking about training to 100%, and you're talking about training to all these edge case scenarios, and it makes me smirk a little bit because I feel like I'd love to just train to like the normal situation, not even the edge case situations. And I know a lot of us struggle with training because it's like, man, it's expensive. It takes a lot of time to do it. And I remember David telling me one time, like, well, what if you don't train your people? Like, what's the cost of that? So anyway, it just the thought that kind of was passing through my mind as you were talking.
And I have to say, Jed, you actually used a naughty word when it comes to training. And this is going to make every single person on this call mad. It's time. Time is not, it doesn't exist when it comes to training. You have two words, and then this is separate from this, but I have to make this point. You have time and quality. One is going to be the constant, and one is going to be the variable. Quality always has to be the constant. Let time be the variable. Get people trained right, and you will spend way less because you don't have to train them again. And you'll have to turn them over. So that's just something I'm very passionate and powerful about. If anybody wants help training, that's what we do in that Achieving World-Class Results course, is we actually teach people the right ways to train so that it actually costs less. Training's cheap when you do it right. So sorry, that was my little diatribe soapbox. I apologize for that, but it needed to be said. And then when we talk about this empowerment of what decisions can they make and what decisions can they not make? That's important is, hey, you know what? In this box, you can do everything you want. Inside this fence, you get all these decisions. You get to do every single thing that you can imagine. You are in charge of these. As soon as it gets outside of that, I need you to give it to somebody else, escalate it. Here's to the corporate office. Here's to my district manager. Here's to the GM. Here's to anybody. It's learning those boundaries and not having any gray area will build that empowerment, because they say, I know how to do A, B, C, D, and E, but when it comes to F, G, and H, nope, not my world. It goes over here. And understanding that clear boundary allows people to not have to get into that gray pressure to where they're not trained, they're not equipped. And as Laura said earlier, we don't train people to that level of leadership only till the tactile. Yeah, I mean, it's the Peter principle is what you're 100% defining. Well, let's make sure the people, the decisions they are making, they're trained for. And that's how we really put those boundaries in place. So the practical tools that we really want to do is design for the understaffing. What does it look like when one person shows up? What does your business look like at that core transactional basis? And you're going to practice them. Practice all of these things, because if you don't practice them, then it's not going to happen. We have to have that muscle memory along with that mental side as well. We're talking about training people to 100% on all spectrum of the volume that could be. And what does the design of the business look like? And then the last, that cross training between jobs. So you can look to the left, you can look to the right, and you can actually help those people. Or if they don't show up, you could actually work both of those stations at once, which is definitely possible at certain volumes. This is it. It's not luck. It is all about design. And that's what we truly love to help people with, is how do you actually design? Your business isn't broken. It's just not designed for what you're trying to get it to do. It would be like you want to drive 200 miles an hour, but you have a Honda Accord engine. Well, you're not designing your business for what you want. You need to design the processes and every single thing that you do so that you can achieve those results that you're looking for. Get those processes in design, and when they are in design for that, what you're looking for, your team feels better, they have less stress, they're trained for all those conditions, and they're empowered to make decisions that they can be responsible for, that they are trained to a leadership level of, and don't get put into that Peter principle mentality of, I've got the tactical skill, but I don't have a clue about how to make those decisions. That's the bottom line when it comes to this. Now, you want to learn more about what we do? One thing that we always offer when we do these is every company that's on here listening, come take a seat at our Achieving World-Class Results course. We complimentary seat out because we love to teach. We love to get this information. I love to talk. I don't know if y'all figured that out just yet, but it's one of my favorite things to do in the world. So come listen to me and David talk for 20 hours. It's amazing. I loved it. So, hey, use this QR code, take a picture, and you get a complimentary seat in one of our Achieving World-Class Results course. I know Jed took it. He did absolutely phenomenal in it. And we've had, over 10,000 people in it. We'd love to get those leaders and develop more people. And you can learn a little bit about process design and getting your store designed to where you're going to get the results that you want. Go ahead, pull out the phone, get it going, and we'd love to have you join us. And hopefully you enjoyed what you heard, and hopefully my weird hyperbolic metaphors didn't get so far out there that people are still looking up how to spell pterodactyl on Google.
Well, thank you, Billy. Thank you, David. I really appreciate you guys sharing your insight. One quick question, actually, for our first presenters before we head off. They were asking what, and maybe Andy, best for you, but what is goHappy was the question. I hadn't heard of it before, and shame on me, we were just using it as jargon, but Andy, can you just give it, very quick high level of goHappy?
goHappy is the most effective app-free engagement tool that enables employers to actually get through to their frontline workforce.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Laura, Melanie, and David, and also Billy. And thank you to our audience. We just really appreciate your time and knowledge and everything that everybody's contributed here. For the audience, before you go, I'd just like to remind you to check out our SG Voices website. There's more valuable content on there, past webinars that we've done and other industry-specific resources. And also you can stay updated on all of our upcoming events and even sign up for our next webinar. So mark your calendars. It's going to be April 16th, and we'll have Paragon Solutions and Tote AI. So Paragon Solutions and Tote AI, April 16th. They'll be talking about how to build a food brand that customers actually want and how AI is turning fuel customers into in-store buyers. Lots going on in the AI space, so we want to keep you abreast of the trends that are taking place there. So there'll be a very quick survey. It's like 2 questions as you sign out. We want to make sure that we're delivering the right educational content to you. Please just click a couple buttons. It'll take you 5 seconds to complete. Thank you for being part of SG Voices, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.